Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to make the dishwashers, and for that we are needing some plates and stuff. So I am using my Etsy mold here to make some square plates and some round plates. And I'm just cutting pieces out here and placing into the mold and then squeezing it really nice and tightly in there to make the plates. I do have a video on that somewhere, so I will link that in the info box below. I want a cup as well, so I am taking my clay and I rolled it out on a setting 7 on my pasta machine, and now I am cutting a strip that is around 1 centimeter tall. I'm using this mold I have here. It is actually a mold that I made from the inside of one of those big straws. I just shoveled. I just packed in the mold putty into a tiny piece of a straw, and I waited the half hour for it to harden, and then I just cut up the straw and took out the molds, and that's the way I made the mold. Now I'm just rolling the clay around this piece here at the top of it, and I'm placing a circle that I cut out with a circle cutter that is actually fitting really nicely to this mold here. And then of course I am softening out the connection both here on the side and on the bottom of my little cup. And then I cut a tiny piece for the handle of my cup. And I am going to place that first on the top part of the cup and going upwards. This way I can fold it over and down after connecting it, and it looks like a really nice handle for the cup. So I'm just taking my time with this. Oh, and that is Fimo liquid that I have here in the corner that I'm using to soften out the connection between the handle and the cup. And that is this little cup all done. I am going to bake the cup on the mold. The plates I'm going to take out of the mold. After baking, I am going to wet sand these little plates and cups, and I'm just using a piece of sandpaper with some water on there, and I'm just sanding the edges, making sure I like the result of these. Then I want to make a sponge, and I'm gonna use a sponge to do that. So I'm taking my X-Acto knife and I'm running through the top part of the sponge, and then I'm cutting it into the width that I like to get. So here I have my sponges, and I'm just going to cut it a little extra to make sure it is like I want it to. Then I am placing my yellow strip here on top of the green, and I'm actually cutting into the green with my scissor because I found that easier, the top layer of the green here, so that I have the right width. And then I am carefully cutting in from the side, like you see here, to lift up only a tiny bit of the green. I don't want it to be too thick, but I want it to be there, so I'm just cutting in there. So now I have two pieces in the same width and length, and I'm just gonna take my tacky glue and really glue all over the yellow surface here. I want the green to be stuck on there, so give it enough. And then I'm just smushing the green part here into the glue and making sure everything will be connected. And then I went off camera and cut off a piece that is around half a centimeter or 6 millimeter wide, and I'm just cleaning it up a tiny bit here and there, making sure I like this little sponge. And there I have a sponge for the dishes. Very neat. So now we got sponges, cups, and plates, and I am going to make this dishwash sink. I 3D printed it on my resin printer. I designed it in Fusion 360, And you can make it of a clay if you want to. If you have a mold or something in the size you like and the shape you like, then you can drape your clay over it and then use that as well. So you can actually do this in clay. But I am making a few of these as I am bringing them to my sales exhibitions. So I was making so many that it was easier for me to just 3D print them and paint them. I mixed a tiny bit of white with a tiny bit of a rust color, and I am just going to paint these inside and outside, and I gave them actually 2 coats. I also designed some dishwasher brushes on Fusion 360 and printed them on my 3D printer, again resin printing. You can do this print in whatever color you want to. I just only had the translucent resin here, and I'm going to paint these, and I would suggest that you paint them no matter what color you print them in. I will leave a link in the info box below for the print file of these as well, so you can find them if you want to make them yourself. Again, these can be made out of clay. Just cut a thin piece of clay for the handle of the dishwasher brush, and then another piece for the brushes on there. I don't think they're too hard to do, but I actually did not show you in this video because this video is long enough. I used my Fimo glaze to glaze the handle on the brush, and I also glazed the sinks that we made so that it all has a nice glazy look. It looks a little more real. Don't give the bristles on the brush because you don't want them to be glossy. I mixed a tiny bit of a light brown with some white to make it even lighter, and that's what I'm using for the bristles on the brush. And I also used that for the handle on the other 2 brushes, and on those brushes I paint the bristles in white instead of this light brown. So now we have the cups, the plates, the brushes, the sponges, and the washing sink. And now I want to make some dishwasher soap, and I have these 2 ink pens here, and I am going to use that on the outside of these bottles. The bottles I made in Fusion 360, and I printed them again on my resin printer, and this time you want the resin to be the clear one, so you can do this little trick here. It really looks as if there is soap in there when you're all done. So I used the green here on 2 of them, and I used the yellow one on the other 2 bottles, so that I have a green and a yellow for each of these dishwashing sinks that we are making here. I found some labels online, and I what do you call that? I made them smaller in my picture program and then printed them out like this. And now I just cut them out, and I'm going to glue one on each side of the bottles here. Then I left them for an hour or 2 to make sure the glue was all cleaned, and I grabbed them with my tweezers. And I'm going to take my UV gel nail art. This is a top coat resin thing and I'm using that on these bottles to give them a really nice shine, and I'm making sure I have it all over the bottle, not the cap, but all over the bottle, even on the bottom. And then I'm going to place them under my UV light. When the UV gel top coat resin thingy was hardened, I am just taking some white paint and painting the lid all white, and that's it for this little bottle of soap. So now we have the plates, the cup, the soap, the sponges and the brushes in the sink now, and I want to make this little rack here to clean the dishes with as well. And I am going to knit that with my knitting needles. These are 0.8 millimeters thick, so very thin. And I am using a thin thread that I have lying around. And I'm going to cast on 18 new masks on this little knitting needle. Let me show you how I made the first one more time. So I start by going in from the underneath and up, over, around, and then take that with me back down, and then I have the first one. Then I can start again just like that, from underneath, over, around, and down again. And I keep doing this until I have 18 of these in total. So I have my 18 mask on here, and I am going to knit now, and I am doing that in gathering. So first I am lifting up the first mask over to the other pen. I'm not knitting that one, and then I am just going in a gather stitch all the way down this side. When I come to the other end, I just turn it around. I slip the first mask over on my knitting needle, and then I again do the gather knitting all the way down. So it's very simple, and I'm doing this until I have 28 pins knitted all the way up. So I skipped ahead, and I now have 28 rows of this gathering stitches, and now it's time to close off. The first stitch, I am just going to slip that off and let it go to the other pen. Then I am knitting one more stitch, and I am taking that first stitch over that one that I just knitted. I'm going to knit another one and sliding the other stitch over the next stitch. And I'm gonna keep on doing this until I do not have more than one stitch left on my pen. I am ending up with one stitch left on my knitting needle, and I am going to cut the yarn or the thread, and then I am just pulling the thread through the last one, just like that, and then it is all closed. Now I just need to use my needle and sew in the two end pieces here just a tiny bit. It doesn't need to be that neat or that much of a stitch that I'm doing here to stitch in this end here. I just want to make sure that it is not going up when it is displayed. And this is not gonna be handled in any kind of way, so a few stitches is more than enough. And then I'm cutting my yarn, and I do this on the other end as well. So now we have all the parts that we need for this little setup, and I am going to do the fun part now. Let me put this to the side and then do one at a time. I am taking my UV resin here, and I am putting in a nice layer that fills the bottom part of this little sink. It is like 3 or 4 millimeters thick, not more than that. Then I'm going to place my cup and my 3 plates into this resin, and I'm just going to decide how to put them, because I want them to be kind of visible, all of them. Maybe something like that. And then I am going to take my UV light, and I am going to harden this first layer of resin. When this is all hardened, I am putting in yet another layer of UV resin. Again, only around 4 or 5 millimeters. I don't want it to be too thick at the time, because I want it to be all hardened, and I'm making sure it is with just small layers at the time. I am arranging it here and there around these things first, and then I am then I'm placing this cloth in there, making sure that the resin has a nice grip on it, and the sponge as well, and one of these brushes in there as well. And I'm making sure that the sponge is sitting like I want it to, and then I'm putting it under the UV light again. And now for the last layer, I got these small tiny translucent beads that is kind of shimmering in the light in all different colors, and they really look like bubbles. So I poured in a tiny bit of resin in my little cup here, my mixing cup, and I'm pouring in a lot of these beads. And I actually did put a little too much in there, but I have one more to make, so it's all fine. So I want a mixture where everything is mixed in with resin, but it is not floating around in the resin. It's more like a thick blob of small beads here. And then I carefully pour this into my little sink here, and placing the bubbles all over where I want them. And this is actually the fun part of it. And when I'm happy with the result of my bubbles, then I am going to place this one more time under the UV light, and that's all there is for this little craft. I had a lot of fun with this, and even if you don't have a resin printer, I hope I could give you just a few ideas of what to do when you're crafting in 1 to 12. Thank you for watching, and happy crafting.